Hi, my name is Eric Rosadaro along with Alan Jensen-Sellers. Today we're going to discuss the topic of firewalls, and hopefully we will be able to provide you with more information that you already know about firewalls and give you some good recommendations. Firewall. What it does. A firewall is simply a program or a hardware device that filters the information coming through the internet connection into your private network or computer system. A firewall trusts nobody unless it's told otherwise. It secures your computer from the outside world. It helps you protect computers inside a large company, which meaning, like big companies like Apple, they probably have a great firewall. So that's in reference to that. Firewalls most commonly rely on packet filtering where incoming traffic is checked against criteria that may include IP address, domain names, communication protocols, and even keywords. Firewall, free downloads. Firewall can be downloaded for free. Zone Alarm Free Firewall was one of the things that I researched and one of the best free firewalls that I found out there. The website to the URL I provided for you, you can copy and paste that, check it out, download it, see how it works. I did some research on it, and Zone Alarm, award-winning free firewall, is an industry leader in the field of personal firewall and has been for more than a decade. So if you want to put this on your personal computer and give it a chance, see what happens. You might like it. So firewall websites and Windows. Here's a list of the best firewall websites. Norton costs $49.99 per year. Zone Alarm is a free firewall service that is ranked one of the best that I just talked about with you. There is a high-end firewall called Kaspersky Internet Security, which is $54.99 a year. Norton, I've heard many good things about. That people use that a lot. So if you don't mind paying money for a firewall, that would be one of my recommendations. I haven't heard of this Casper Internet Security firewall, but it says it's a high-end firewall, and I did a little digging on that. And, I think that's a little better than the Norton because it's more of a high-end firewall, so it'll probably give you better protection to your computer. So you don't lose any documents, get any viruses on your computer or anything like that, It's always important that I've learned throughout doing my research on firewalls with Linux and Windows that you have, the right amount of security that you're going to need on your computer so that you don't lose any of your files or your computer gets infected by a virus, because firewalls are a great thing to have. And it helps save your work and everything that you've done on your computer for what you need, and it's one of the biggest elements, I guess you could say, of computer. Internet security is definitely something that everybody needs and everybody should have. If you don't have it, simply someone can hack into your computer, steal your stuff, give you a virus, you have to go out and buy another computer possibly. So just think about that possibility, and the importance of having a firewall, is one of the best things I think you can have with a computer.
Okay, talking about the Linux firewall options, this is Alan Jensen-Sellers. Most commonly, IP tables is the application that users use and use to view and edit the permissions table provided by the Linux kernel firewall. The Ubuntu distributions come with UFW Uncomplicated Firewall, which is basically a simpler front end to interact with those permissions tables in the kernel. There is a graphical version of UFW, GUFW, available. You can get it from the command line using apt-get. NFTables is the latest version of the core kernel packet classification framework. Replaces IP tables, IP6 tables, ARP tables, and E tables. Many of the Linux firewall products are designed to work with IP tables or NetFilter. A couple of the options that I came across on the web, IPCOP, which is a Linux firewall distribution designed with small and home office network users. It's intended to be run on a separate machine, not on your machine that you're using. It's designed to protect your entire network. It's a stateful firewall based on a Linux net filter. It uses a web-based interface for management. So again, even now, these Linux firewalls are trying to be designed to be as intuitive as possible for people. Firewall, another one I looked at. It's a high-level tool for configuring net filter based on entries in a set of configuration files. It can be used on a dedicated firewall machine, a system functioning as a gateway, router, and server, or it can be used on a standalone machine. Very versatile. Config, server, security, and firewall. Another stateful packet inspection firewall. This one does have login, intrusion detection, and security features for servers specifically. Again, it works with a graphical configuration panel. Again, interacts with IP tables and net filters. All of these options that I've looked at are free and open source. However, some do have paid commercial versions or paid support, or they have actual hardware machines available for sale. So some are more free than others. I'm going to go into more detail with Firewall because it is designed to be used on both dedicated machines, but it also can be configured for a single desktop machine. And we're going to explore that in a little bit greater depth. The Firewall website is great. It has a lot of information in its FAQ and documentation section to guide you through the process. There are a lot of different ways you can obtain Firewall. You can download the source code. You can get it from in other packages for, say, Red Hat, Linux. But from Ubuntu, the easiest is certainly via apt-get. It's in the repository. Has many default configurations that are available for you to choose from. Very simple universal configuration up to using 3 or more interfaces. So it's pretty flexible. After installing Firewall, you've got to configure it by editing or installing one of the pre-made configurations. It's done by copying the files, just simply from the example files. I've listed these down here, but I'm going to jump into the command line and actually kind of walk you through the process from getting it to installing these files. I'm going to walk you through the process of setting up Firewall in its universal configuration, probably the simplest way to go. There's an awful lot that you can do to customize Firewall, but this is the most basic way to do it. First off, you're going to have to make most of these changes as root, so it's probably best to just go ahead and get into your shell with super user privileges. So the first thing I'll have to do is download and install it, which is fairly easy under Ubuntu since it is in the repository. So you can use apt-get to install it. Alright, after that's done, you have to configure it. The easiest way to do that is to use one of their sample or example configurations. And those are stored in the documentation directory, which we'll go over to now, so those sample files can be found in the user share docs Firewall directory, and it'll be found in examples. Quick list. Now they have different configurations for one interface, two interfaces, or three interfaces. That being, if you're using a machine that's set up to act as a router and a firewall. Universal is what they recommend for using it on an individual personal machine. So let's cd into that. So in here we have files, interfaces, rules, zones, and policy. These are all different things that determine what the interfaces are, what rules are set for that, and it also uses zones. You can take a look at any of these files. And that just gives Firewall information about how to handle traffic on your machine. So the way that we do this is to copy those into the etc Firewall directory. It needs to have the file interfaces, it needs to have the file rules, and it needs to have the file zones and policy. So to copy those into the etc Firewall directory, which is going to tell it how to run, we just need to copy those files. So we're going to do that. Okay, so we're going to copy the files, interfaces, rules, policy, and zones into the etc Firewall directory. Alright, so once we're done with that, we can zip over there and we can get our firewall running. So once we're here, if we want to take a look at what's in there, we can look at the firewall.conf file, and that's going to show what the current configuration is. And you can edit that file to change aspects of the configuration. So let's take a look at that. So, some of these are very simple, telling you that it's enabled at startup, how much information is it giving you. There's a lot of things in there that haven't been set yet, and they can all be changed. So as you go through this, you can look through the man page and find out some more about all of these different settings that you can change or not. Although, like I said, it's set up to be as simple as possible, so that with this universal set of configurations, you're probably basically good to go. If you are using a more advanced situation where you need more complex rules, you would certainly be able to customize it to do an awful lot. They do recommend that you want to totally disable your existing firewall. So they suggest if you have IP tables that you go service IP tables stop. Okay, service wasn't loaded, so that's not really an issue for us. And you can totally then disable that particular service. So now from that prompt, you can easily get it started. If you spell it properly. Well, I guess I successfully started it, or it may have been taken care of by the actual install process. So you can stop it. So it would just go sbin Firewall clear. Okay, this is interesting. I'm not sure what to do about this. Okay, this is an interesting problem. I'm not sure why it's happening, but I'm going to do what all great computer technicians do when they have a problem like this, and I'm going to restart the computer. Okay, so I'm back, and we'll see where we're at. So, try that again. Okay, this time it worked correctly, so it builds and we'll start it, and so now we should be good to go. Now this is going to be automatically started up with your system when you log in and out. So at this point you don't really have to do anything else, it's running. So we can take a closer look at some of the files that make up what instructs the Firewall files. So we can look at how the zones are defined. Okay. Now it's noted in here there's only a couple of zones, the firewall and the net zone. There can be more. You can have a local network file section. You can have a DMZ if you're going to be setting up a DMZ for an email server or something like that. So the zones is really something you can edit as need, and you have different options that you can apply to all of the zones as how you want to do it. So the zones are entirely what you want them to do. So you can look over the man pages on zones in particular and see what your options are. But there's quite a bit. So that's where you'll also define some of the things about what traffic to allow and what traffic to deny in terms of your zones. Now your policy for connections from one zone to another is going to be in the policy file. Now in this case, most of the zones that we have on a single machine, probably not going to be making a lot of use of it, but let's take a look at it. So basically the source there is if it is going from the firewall zone into the network source destination. This tells it to accept those connections, but anything coming from outside, from the net source destination, all policy is to drop that, so those connections are not allowed. Now you also have, you can use other sources and decide that you want to allow certain zones, that's the source, to the destination, which might be another zone or all zones. And you can decide whether you want it to, if something happens there, you can decide if you want it to log that, how much information it should give you. So, I mean, these are all things that you can add a lot more detail to. Again, with under the universal configuration, not that much detail is being asked for. So we can also take a look at the interfaces file. Okay, so the zone has net. Interface, it lists as all options. Basically talks about the various different ways that can be accessed. So it allows pretty much everything to go through all interfaces. But if you wanted to, in that, you could edit this file to use your local Ethernet adapter so that it would recognize specifically that. Alright, after we've done that, you can see I had a few hiccups there, but it went pretty smoothly. The documentation is very complete. It's easy to access. Some of the key sections are the Universal Configuration Guide, Getting Started, and the Setup Guide. I did note that there's really good sort of visual indications of network configurations you might be working with, so it's definitely worth looking at the Setup Guide. The takeaway in terms of the personal end user, Linux firewall options are certainly more robust. You can do a lot with them. That they may be more complex than what you typically need. The graphical uncomplicated firewall just has a real simple on-off switch, and for a lot of people, that may be all you really need. Windows options that were discussed are also geared to the personal market and are going to be kind of similar, fairly easy to manage, very basic. There may be more you can do under the hood if you really dig in, but in most cases you've got to pay for them. And most of the Linux offerings are free and open source and scalable. In the case of Firewall, probably capable of handling firewall duties up to an enterprise level network, I think. And also was fairly easy for me to do, just to put on my machine. So that's where we stand. I'm Jensen-Sellers. I hope you enjoyed it.